So I have some homework for you. How many of you weren't here last week? If you were not here last week, I have homework for you. I need you to go home and listen to the live stream from last week. Because you missed something that you need to hear. So if you weren't here, make sure you do that. But for those who are here this week, let me ask another question. What is the biggest, the best, the luckiest thing that could ever happen to you? That if it would happen, it would be the one thing that if you could win it, if you could get it, if you could have it, if it could happen to you, that it would change your life for the better and the most. What would it be? Now, let's be honest. You got the answer in your head. How many of you thought winning the lottery? Be honest. I know some of you thought it because you're not alone. A Gallup poll found that 6 out of every 10 people, 60%, have bought a lottery ticket within the past 12 months. Now, I'm sure as good Adventists, we probably don't follow that same percentage, but maybe 50. We might be down 10%. We might be close to 60. But think about it. Think about what it would be like to get out of debt, to have savings, to have money at the end of the month, to be set for retirement, to be as generous as you want as a giver, to have your marriage stress-free when it comes to finances. You see, that's why we dream of winning the lottery, because if we could just eliminate any and every financial issue, life would be set, or so we think. But let's be honest, the odds, they're against us when it comes to the lottery. In fact, they're way against us. You see, the odds of winning the lottery are somewhere in the ballpark of 1 in 175 million. So imagine if I had a dollar bill here, and I meant to have a dollar bill. It, in fact, says my notes to show you a dollar bill, but I left my wallet in my car, so I can't show you a dollar bill. Imagine 175 million dollar bills. One of them is the lucky one. If you pick that one lucky dollar bill, you win all of them. But then say, in order to figure it out, you have to lay them out. End to end, you lay out $175 million bills. And you got to choose one of them. So we start in Washington, and we start laying out those dollar bills. And we go all the way down to Walt Disney World in Orlando. And then from Walt Disney World in Orlando, we then go to Disneyland in California. From there, we start going up to Portland, Oregon. And then we go to Portland, Maine. And then we make our way back to Washington. Now you have to get in your car and drive somewhere along that loop and stop and pick up $1 bill to see if you got the lucky one. Those are your odds of winning the lottery. You have to randomly stop somewhere along that route and pick up one lucky dollar bill. So if solving your money problems is high on your agenda, you might need to find a plan B. Because plan A is not that likely. So, we've been in this series called Fit for Life. We've looked at becoming spiritually fit. We've looked at becoming emotionally fit. And we looked at becoming physically fit. So today, as we close this series out, we're going to look at becoming financially fit. You see, I've preached on this before. Last year, I did a whole series on money. And this is going to be kind of a summarization of that. I'm not going to deep dive into it, but I want to give you some principles and some new stuff that will hopefully change the way you think about this so that you can be financially fit for life. And I think it's some of the simplest, some of the easiest, and most straightforward teaching that you're going to find in the Bible on finances. You see, I wish someone had told me this years and years ago, because life would have been a whole lot easier if I had known it when I was really young. So those of you who are young, especially pay attention, because this can help you avoid some of the mistakes that some of us older people have made. So if it's a review for you, then review it. Make sure you're still on the right path. But if it's new for you, and for some of you it will be, take it in with great care and deliberation. So let me lay it out for you in shorthand. And then I'm going to come back and bring it all back together. So the Bible's path to financial fitness can be packaged in what can be called the 10-10-80 plan. So you see, you first start off with your income, and you take 10% of everything that you get, and you give it back to God and His work through your local church, of which you're a part. That's the first 10 of the 10-10-80 plan. The second part of that 10-10-80 plan is then to take another 10% and invest it in some kind of a savings plan. In other words, with every paycheck, pay yourself. 10% to God, and then 10% to yourself in savings. And then that leaves us with the 80 of the 10-10-80. That 80% is what you then live on. Give first, save second, and then live on the rest. It's really that simple. But let's dig in and kind of look at it a little bit deeper, beginning with that first 10% that we give to God. In everything I'm going to say to you, I want to pause for a minute and say this. In everything I'm going to say to you, please know that I don't want something from you. I'm not saying this to try to get more money for the church or for me, and as you know, I don't get a salary, so you know it's not coming to me. So I'm not asking anything from you. I want something for you. In everything that I say, whether it's this week or another week, I don't want something from you. I want something for you. Because if you don't believe that, if you think that either this church or another church, if all they want is something from you, then you're probably at the wrong church. Because a church should be about what they can do for you, not what they can get from you. So, again, I don't want something from you. But we're going to start out in the book of Malachi, this explicit interchange between God and His people about giving. Most of you know this passage, but I'm going to look at it in the Message paraphrase. It kind of gives it in a little different light. You have a long history of ignoring my commands. You haven't done a thing I've told you. Return to me, so I can return to you, says God. You ask, how do we return? Begin by being honest. Do honest people rob God? But you rob me day after day. You ask, how have we robbed you? The tithe and offering, that's how. And now you're under a curse, the whole lot of you, because you're robbing me. Bring your full tithe to the temple treasury, so there will be an ample provisions in my temple. Test me in this, and see if I don't open up heaven itself to you and pour out blessings beyond your wildest dreams. For my part, I will defend you against marauders and protect your wheat fields and vegetable gardens against plunderers. Let me talk about just some of the words that were in that passage. The first word I want to talk to you about is the word tithe, which literally means 10%. It's a term that was used for the practice of taking 10% of everything that you have earned, whether through labor or inheritance, windfall or sale, and giving it back to God. Many people ask, so what's 10% mean? Is that on the net or the gross income? Well, does it include stock or just what I earn as a paycheck? And if it's on stock, well, is it based upon the price when I sell it or the initial value of the stock or on how much it's appreciated? Is it just on my salary? What about my bonus check? Is it on the bonus check too? And since I have to live, couldn't it just be 10% on what I have left over after I've paid all my bills and subtracted all my living expenses? So what is that 10%? You see, for God, this is really a heart issue, not a financial issue. He cuts through it all and he says this. He says, bring the whole tithe on everything you have been given and on all that you have received, first before anything else. It also talked about an offering. An offering was anything you gave above and beyond your tithe. You see, 10% was considered the bare minimum that anyone would consider returning to God. It was the floor, never the ceiling. So periodically, out of gratitude and commitment to God, people would give an offering above and beyond that 10%. And the way you would give either of these would be through the temple. And the temple was the designated place of people to worship, the center of a person's community of faith, and the central place for ministry for the people of God. In the New Testament, the temple became the local church. In the book of Corinthians, we read this. To the church at Corinth, don't you know that you yourselves are the temple of God? God's temple is sacred, and you are that temple. Which is why throughout the New Testament, tithes and offerings of God's people were to go to the local church of which they were a part. Nowhere else. You could give offerings in other locations, but not the tithe. The tithe isn't used as giving to the United Way, Salvation Army, some parachurch ministry, or even disaster relief. That's not where the tithe goes, but to the church. Those other things are great places to give offerings and to support them, but it's not where your tithe goes. And your tithe is to be given regularly, systematically. Also in the book of Corinthians, we read this passage. Now regarding your question about the money being collected, you should follow the same procedure I gave to the churches in Galatia. On the first day of the week, you should each put aside a portion of the money you have earned. It's supposed to be periodic, systematic. So when people don't do this, when they keep something from God, something that God has actually given them to begin with, and don't allocate it the way that God says to, it's serious. Do you remember what Malachi said it was? Will a man rob God? Yet you rob me. But you ask, how do we rob you? In tithes and offerings. You are under a curse, the whole nation of you, because you are robbing me. That's how serious this is to God. If you don't follow his prescription on finances, you're committing robbery. As an assistant district attorney in my day job, robbery, I can tell you, is a Class D felony, which means that even if you have zero record, have never been charged with a crime before, if you are convicted of robbery, there's no probation. You go straight to prison. This is the seriousness that God is talking about. You see, in the Bible, to be under a curse from God meant that you were outside of his blessing, outside of his umbrella of protection and provision. It meant that you were operating independent of his supernatural oversight and intervention. Do you want a curse from God? You want to be outside of his protection? You see, if you follow his prescription, he'll give you a blessing. Now, what kind of blessing is he talking about? You see, there's kind of two extremes when we talk about blessings, and neither of them are accurate. The first extreme is to fall into the name it, claim it, health and wealth approach that says, tithe, and you too can drive a Mercedes because God will give you one. That somehow that is key to having a 7-figure income and 10,000 square foot homes like some mega church pastors have. It's absolute garbage. But the other extreme is just as off base. And it's the idea that God doesn't bless us at all. That there is no relationship between what you do financially and what God does to bless you. That's not biblical either. You see, the Bible teaches without qualification that if you follow God into this aspect of financial management, he will bless you. Now, what kind of blessing are we talking about? That's up to God. It could be a financial blessing, but it could be a blessing of security, joy, depth of character, fulfillment, impact, influence, creativity. There will be a blessing from God. You see, there can be a favor shown on an enterprise, on your business, on your marriages, your families. But the one thing we can say for certain, because God is specific on this, that he will bless us in one way or another. The one thing he says we can be absolutely confident of coming our way when we follow this prescription. The passage we just read made reference to protection from marauders, plunderers, people and things that take money away from you. The kinds of things that you might naturally worry about if you began to give away 10% of your income. 10% that, let's be honest, might be your margin, your safety net, your security. God makes it clear that those who follow him in this area will never have to worry about their giving taking away from their supply. You can rest assured that you will not lose ground because of your generosity. You see, if you give 10%, God will make that 90% go just as far as 100, if not further. He will supernaturally care for all of your needs. The Bible teaches us that if we will do what God commands us, if we'll honor him in this way, he will honor us. If we place ourselves under his blessing, under his umbrella of protection and provision and care. Not only that, we are told that if we trust him in this way, our giving will never outpace his supply. It's as if God is saying, listen, trust me enough and care about me enough to do what I say in this area of financial management. And in return, I will become supernaturally involved in your life in a unique way, bringing incredible levels of blessing, including a specific blessing that you will never have to worry about your giving leaving you without enough for your own needs. Take care of your money in normal ways. Don't binge. Don't go crazy with debt. Do your part. And God says he will do his. It's all throughout the Bible. In the book of Proverbs, we see it, where it says, honor the Lord by giving him the first part of all of your income, and he will fill your barns with wheat and barley and overflow your wine vats with the finest wines. You see, the first part of fitness, being fit for life financially, is to give God 10% through the local church of which you are a part. That brings God into your finances. It's so much easier to live on 90% of your income inside the will and blessing of God than it is to live on 100% outside of his will and blessing. Which brings us to the second part of the 10-10-80 plan. Take another 10% and invest it in some type of a savings plan. With every paycheck, as I said, pay yourself. And in this category, the Bible doesn't give you a percentage like the tithe. It doesn't say 10%, but most financial counselors would recommend that 10% figure. But make no mistake, just because it doesn't give you an exact percentage, saving is one of the most emphasized ideas in the Bible. Again, in that great wisdom book, the book of Proverbs, we see several occasions where it talks about that. The first says, go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider its ways and be wise. It has no commander, no overseer or ruler. Yet it stores its provisions in the summer and gathers its food at harvest. In Proverbs chapter 10, it says, he who gathers crops in summer is a wise son, but he who sleeps during harvest is a disgraceful son. Then Proverbs 21 tells us this, the wise man saves for the future, but the foolish man spends whatever he gets. Without savings, you end up living paycheck to paycheck, hand to mouth, with little or nothing in reserve. And that's not the way any of us want to live. So why don't we save? For most of us, it's because we think we don't have enough money to save. We say, yeah, I know, I should save, but I don't have enough money to get by as it is. How can I save? See, the problem is that line of thinking, although it may seem correct to us and it may seem where we are at, it's not accurate. I want to walk through something. I got it from the writings of a financial advisor, and it's called the latte effect. I don't know if you noticed what I carried up there. It's empty now. Starbucks, and this is going to help me demonstrate the latte effect, even though this was actually a hot chocolate effect, but latte effect sounds better. You see, The big idea is that we have the money to save. We just waste it. Usually on small things that we don't even register to our thinking, that we don't even think about. So this financial expert developed this latte effect, and it came after there's a seminar where he met with this couple, and they came to him saying, we don't even have $10 a day to save. We have nothing that we can have to put into savings. And they said the things were so tight that they just didn't have it. So he started to ask them about their life. And he said, okay, let's start in the morning. Before you go to work, do you drink coffee? And the husband says, well, yeah. And he says, okay, great. Where do you get it? Do you make it at home? Or do you get it on your way to work? Or do you get it at work for free? And the husband said, well, neither. You see, we get our coffee on the way to work. We go to Starbucks. And he says, oh, so what do you get at Starbucks? And the wife says, well, they commute, we both get grande non-fat lattes, which I priced last night, and it still is fairly accurate. They said, well, how much are these? And they said it was $4.50. They're actually about $4.95 as of last night, according to the Starbucks app, but right around $5 each. So for both of them to get it, you're looking at $10. He says, well, do you get anything to eat with your lattes? And the wife says, well, yeah, I usually get a bagel or a muffin. That costs about $1.95 each, so another $4 between them. So the expert says, okay, well, let's start adding this up. $10 for 2 lattes, $4 for muffins. We're already at $14 between the two of you, and you haven't even got to work yet. And he actually went through the rest of the day with them. For the husband, he asked the husband specifically. He says, okay, so you got this $5 double non-fat latte. You got your muffin for $1.95. Says, do you get any snacks before lunchtime? He says, yeah, you usually get a candy bar and a Coke before noon. Another $2. Sugar, we talked about that last time. So, well, what about lunch? He said, well, I usually get a burrito, some Coke, and some chips. How much did that cost? Well, about $8. Had to pay for parking where he works, so that's $12 a day for parking. Red box rental for the kids, $4. And I asked the wife about her day. Again, she has that double non-fat latte at around $5, a muffin at around $2. She's a little bit healthier. She has juice and a protein bar, $6.25. Her lunch was also a little bit healthier, but also more expensive. It's odd how that works. She has a salad and an iced tea at $9.50. And then, she needed a little bit of pick-me-up in the afternoon, so she got a second double non-fat latte around 3 o'clock, so another $5. Tired, busy working family, they get takeout for dinner. The husband and the kids, $25. The late fee for not returning the Redbox movies on time, another $4. And you can kind of see where we're going with this, don't you? The total between the two of them for one day was $88.30. Now here's the point. I'm not suggesting that you stop going to Starbucks. I mean, that wouldn't be of God. Don't worry, it was a hot chocolate. It's okay. It's about a couple who said that they couldn't even find $10 a day to save. And yet they were spending almost $90 a day on things that they didn't have to spend it on. You see, if they had made their coffee at home, ate an apple instead of that muffin, the $10 a day at Starbucks would be about 50 cents. If they brought their lunch to work instead of going out to eat, even a few days a week, not every day, and they didn't go to Redbox as much, or they just returned it on time, that money would start to rack up. And just in case you don't think this is typical, let me give you the averages. According to consumerist.com, The average American worker spends more than $20 a week on coffee, which is over $1,000 a year. They generally spend around $1,400 commuting, $37 a day eating out for lunch, $37 a week eating out for lunch. And I think that number is actually probably low. But that's nearly $2,000 a year. And when it comes to saving, it really comes down to decisions, to choices. And here's what blew the couple away. This advisor asked the wife how old she was, and at that time she was 23 years old. So he said to her, okay, let's just say you skip the latte and the muffin in the mornings. Just $5 a day, $150 a month, almost $2,000 a year. If you figure 10%, which is the long-term historic stock market average, he asked her, how much do you think you could save by the time you reached 65 years old? And she said, I don't know, 200,000? Seems like a lot of money. He says, try again. 500,000? He said, how about $1.2 million? She said, you mean my lattes are costing me over $1 million? That's the way to think about it. You see, financial management experts talk about the miracle of compounding interest. You think about that couple in their mid-30s and finding even $10 a day through that latte factor. If they save just $10 a day, and not even every day, just 5 days a week, that's $200 a month, $4,800 a year. If that couple who's in their mid-30s were to put it into a pre-tax retirement account that earned about 8% annually, by the time they were 65, they would have a nest egg of $600,000. Now, whether you can get an 8% return right now really isn't the issue. The key really isn't the interest rate, as much as it is the relationship between the interest and time. And the essential part is time. You see, if you're single and 25 years old, and you put away $200 a month, half of what that couple did, they put away $400 a month. A 25-year-old who just puts away $200 a month 10 years earlier, though, by the time that 25-year-old reaches 65, they would have $703,000. More than the couple putting away double. You see, that's the difference 10 years can make. The secret of compounding interest is time. Over time, money compounds. Over time, money compounds a lot. So save and start saving now. And this is key to those of you who are young. That 25-year-old, let's think about that 25-year-old again. If she puts away that $200 a month, by 65, she would have $703,000. But if she waits 5 years until she is 30 to start, just 60 months later, that only becomes $462,000. From $703,000 to $462,000 based upon 5 years. And if she doesn't start until she's 40, even at $200 a month, every month she'll only have around $191,000, which is still more than zero. But do you see the difference that time makes? And there's no tricks here. Getting the savings and the reserves that you need is nothing more than committing and sticking to a systematic savings plan and doing it as soon as you can, even if it's just $10 a day. You see, the last part of the 10-10-80 plan is after you give 10% back to God and then 10% into some type of savings, then you have that final 80%. And that is what you actually have to live off of. Give first, save second, live off of the rest. So why aren't more of us financially fit? It seems like a pretty simple, straightforward, and easy plan. So why aren't we more financially fit? Why aren't we giving 10% and saving 10% and then living off of the 80%? It's because we've turned that principle upside down. You see, we start off by listing how we want to live our lives. Type of house we want, clothes we want to wear, the trips we want to take, how often we want to eat out, number of flat screens we need in the house. And usually way over what we can actually afford. So then we start going into debt in order to live the lifestyle that we want. And then we try to save something, usually little, if anything, that we actually save. And giving usually gets overlooked almost entirely. How's that working out for people? Is it giving us what we want? Is it making us financially free? Or just the opposite? You see, people, good people, get themselves into this mess who don't mean to. And they call it the financial death spiral. And here's how it works. When you invert that 10-10-80 plan and you put it on its head and you fund your life through ever-increasing amounts of debt, the first thing to go is giving. You feel bad about it, but it feels like it's the easiest thing to give up. The second thing you stop, saving. You know you need to save, but you just can't. All of your money is going to the debt. The next step down, you stop paying your bills in full each month because you just can't. You have so much debt that all you can do is pay the minimum balance on everything. And the spiral keeps going because there comes that emergency in your life. Transmission goes out, you get sick, the roof gets a leak, water heater breaks down. So what do you do then? You stop paying on time. You let bills get 30, 60, 90 days past due, come late on your rent or your mortgage. Utilities are giving you those cut-off notices. Your credit starts to get shot. And every month, you pick the crisis bills to pay because that's all that you can do. But it can only go on for so long because eventually it'll catch up with you. Because life keeps happening. Cars keep breaking down. Kids keep getting sick. Groceries, clothing, gasoline, those all have to be paid, which takes you down the financial death spiral to the point to where you just can't pay things at all. Utilities get turned off, cars get repossessed, until you reach the bottom, which is that you just don't care anymore. You're so defeated, so empty. You're dead inside. But it doesn't have to be that way. You could follow God's plan. And not only follow it, but invite His leadership, His presence, His power, and His blessing into your life. Just start something like the 10-10-80 plan and live a life of financial fitness. You see, if you trust God and give Him what's already His, use that latte factor. Find that $10 a day and start saving. Start living within your means and quit living a debt-sponsored life. And if things have gotten to the point where you're already in the death spiral, I know something like a 10-10-80 plan sounds ridiculous to you if you're already in that spiral. But start somewhere. Even if it's only a 5-5-90 or, quite frankly, a 1-1-98. Start. Because if you don't ever start it, you'll never start working your way back up out of that death spiral. One last word as we come to the end of this series. We've covered a lot of ground. With spiritual fitness, we talked about the importance of reading your Bible, praying, and spending time with God. When it came to emotional fitness, we talked about how important sleep was and Sabbath, people and emotionally renewing experiences that you deal with. With financial fitness, we talked about our weight, we talked about our eating, especially when it comes to sugar and fat, and also about the importance of exercise. And then today we talked about giving and saving. And I've tried to be as practical as I could, starting with 7 minutes a day with God and how you use those 7 minutes. You see, every day, just take those 7 minutes. And then every 7 days, having a Sabbath rest and using it strategically. We talked about, when it came to our physical fitness, the 33 exercise plan. And then today, the 10-10-80 rule for money. You see, these are more than just New Year's resolutions. They are ways of doing life so that you can be fit for life. So how do you keep it up? I read a report that by now, most of us have failed our New Year's resolutions. It actually was a long time ago. About week 3 is when we start really dropping off. But as I reflected on that, I think there's a powerful idea that the people who are really fit and who stay fit in these areas have something that a lot of us don't have. You see, they have a way of thinking about things that's pivotal. I think it can be summed up in a pretty simple way, and I'll call it another principle, a 10-10-10 principle. You see, it stands for 10 minutes, 10 months, 10 years. And it speaks to using your brain to address your life in simple but life-changing ways. What are the consequences of my decision 10 minutes from now, 10 months from now, 10 years from now? The reason this matters is because almost everything and every decision that we make in our lives is built around a 10-minute decision. How will this make me feel now? I'm thirsty. I'm going to get a latte, non-fat latte. What will it do for me now? What will I gain now? And now isn't always bad, but it certainly isn't always good either. You see, the best decisions are made when you start thinking about 10 months or 10 years from now. You want to get physically fit? Most of our fat gathering, fat gaining, fat staying, eating is done based upon a 10-minute decision, right? I'm hungry. There's a drive-through. Making a 10-minute decision can be the wrong one. Want to get financially fit? Most of our get in debt, stay in debt, spending is again a 10-minute decision. I'd like to have a big screen TV. because the Super Bowl's coming up. That's just passed, but Roy had the ultimate big screen TV. He was over at the Outreach Center watching it on the projected wall, and he didn't have to pay for it. But how many, if you ever go to Costco a couple days before the Super Bowl, those big screen TVs, they can't keep them on a shelf. They're going out the door, and usually a day or two after the Super Bowl, they're coming in through the return, which always makes me wonder. But if we make those decisions based upon more than just a 10-minute decision, you see, 10-minute thinking will have you blow off your daily quiet time with God because your day is busy, or you want to hit the snooze button one more time. 10-minute thinking will have you eat whatever it is that looks good for instant pleasure. 10-minute thinking will have you whip out the credit card to pay for something. Everything about being fit for life is won or lost whether you move beyond that 10-minute window and you start thinking more at the 10-month or 10-year window. So you don't have to say no to that cookie that Jim makes that's so wonderful. You don't have to say no to the cookie. You just have to say yes to the body that you want in 10 months or 10 years from now. You don't have to say no to the flat screen TV. You just have to say yes to financial freedom. You're not saying no to sleep. You're saying yes to time with God. You see the difference? It's all about how you choose to think. So go beyond the 10-minute window on things and start thinking in that 10-month, 10-year window. And you see, when you start thinking that way, you will start choosing things that will help you to be fit for life. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, Lord, I just want to thank you for the wisdom that you provide to us in the Bible. Lord, I thank you for everything that you have there and how much you want to spend time with us. Lord, help us to make decisions that are based upon immediate results. Past that 10-minute window. Help us to make decisions based upon what's best for us in 10 months or 10 years. And Lord, as we move forward in this church, as we reach out to the community around us, as we invite them to a series that's coming up, Lord, help us to be the witnesses that you want us to be. And help us to realize that in order to be those witnesses, we need to be fit for life. Thank you for everything you've done for us. In your Son's name, amen.